everything has to do with the decompression stance, guys. And no, normally we talk about the measuring stick hands for the psoas muscle. Maybe try and think about the pelvic floor engaging with the diaphragm. So I'm going to show you the two posture types that are bad, the runway model and the cheerleader. Cheerleader, anterior pelvic tilt, and they squeeze and pull back. So diaphragm not engaged, pelvis too tilted, which anterior tilted is hard for the pelvic floor muscles to engage. Runway model, posterior pelvic tilt, forward pelvic sway, and trying to lift themselves with the shoulders like that. So I show you the good decompression stance. Maybe start with big toes together. What this helps us do is pull the hips in this way. You can see how I get taller, my chest gets broader. Squeezing the hips in, but not the knees, right? Because then I shrink. So pulling the hips in, pushing the knees out at the same time. Show you from the side. The heels are apart, big toes together. So I always feel that I look kind of funny doing this position, but since I have more of the cheerleader posture, I need definitely more glute activation, tucking that tailbone, but also activating the hip flexor at the same time. And then I climb around my thoracic and then unravel, so I don't hyperextend too much because that's my tendency there. That's just my way of correcting that. But I'm already like I'm going into the hinge position to do the founder exercise. So it just looks kind of funny, but it is a lot of, as you can see, diaphragm engagement and also pelvic floor. One good exercise is just trace down, push out against your hands. It's almost like you're doing a good morning, just less bending at the spine, pulling the hips in the socket, pelvic floor is engaged the whole time. The faster you move, the deeper you go, you'll probably lose the pelvic floor engagement. So you can try that with the founder exercise. Another good exercise is like a modified clean with no bar. You could use one if you wanted to. That one's for the shoulders. All right, so we're gonna get to the decompression stance. So she's gonna put her hands right here, the measuring stick position, pinkies on the pelvis, thumbs on the ribs. So we're activating the pelvic floor muscles and the diaphragm at the same time. And then she's gonna push against the outer band with her knees, almost as she pulls the hips in at the same time. So it's kind of like inverting forces. So we're pushing those knees out, pulling the hips in, all adding to length. So then you're just gonna hinge a little bit, push those hips back, and put the arms up right there and try to step laterally. So these bands are a little tight for Alyssa. You can see that she's having trouble pushing the knees out. The whole reason there is we're internally rotating the knee essentially, or the hip. So that's iliopsoas and the adductors working to pull the hip in, but we don't want to knock knee because then we shrink. So we're pulling the hips in, pushing the knees out against the band, hinging, a lot of pelvic floor, go to the prisoner squat almost. So when you're stepping, you're keeping those adductors really engaged, pelvic floor engaged. So the bands just help you not to cheat while keeping yourself in that hinge position. This band's pretty tight, so it's probably pretty hard. So take 3 steps left, get a little deeper if you can. Push those hips back. Good. Good. Really drive those knees out, which will happen naturally as you step. So you don't need to do this one many times, but you should feel that pelvic floor musculature kind of deep in there, trying to hold that hinge position. And the bands just help push the knees out as we squeeze those hips in. Problem with the hips externally rotated is you don't get that pelvic floor activation. Even if we're doing this exercise, we still keep that external rotation. So if we are able to pull in and push against that band, it's a much better hinge, stricter hinge. So even without the band, you'll be able to feel that deep engagement there.
So where am I feeling the burn?
Probably here.
I am.
But probably there's a good 30 things happening here at once, so you get better at this one as you go. But that's good. That's more than I did.
It burns. It's a good burn. Okay. What else?
That's it.
That's it?
Good job.
Well done.
Try a squat there.
Okay.
So drive the knees out, get all the way down. Another good thing for the pelvic floor.
I don't think I can get lower.
That's good.
Yay.
So hey guys, this is Phil. Now we can see his pelvis here is actually at a bit of an angle. It's very anterior pelvic tilt. So we actually wanted a little bit more here. But we could even see the more we get somebody into posterior pelvic tilt, it pushes everything backwards. So the pelvic floor muscles are from the coccyx area here right to the pubic bone there. So if it's too tilted, we're not engaging, it's not supporting anything. And sometimes we get it posterior tilted, but to tuck, we notice we push the hips out in front of the shoulders. So either way, that's not good. So it's not so much about the pelvic tilt, but leveling it and getting it underneath the hips, especially since this external rotation where the hip is turned out that way, because we have all these external rotators, piriformis, obturator, internus turning this way. It forces that pelvis forward, and we don't have that pelvic floor engagement. So the more we're able to pull those hips a little internally rotated, and that's kind of leveling that pelvis, maybe slightly anterior tilt, but not too much where we're here, because then that pelvic floor is not be able to do its job of getting underneath and lifting. That's right. So don't be like Phil here. You can see that how that angled that is. That's not going to help anyone there. Alright guys, so the bridge exercise is the major pelvic floor exercise, and it's really engaging here, and really just more of a shallow lift, keeping that engagement there, because the higher you go, the tendency is to release. So make it tough for you, don't just bend from the spine, right? It's really about engaging, pulling those hips into the socket, then lifting, making it tough. The foundation training version of this is get those feet out a little bit more. Big toes together. Squeezing, kind of pulling in with your toes, putting the weight under the heels, almost like we're flattening the spine. You can feel that engagement there. Adding a little lever with the hands, then lifting. Ooh. And breathing is really important. Feeling that in the pelvic floor and that intra-abdominal pressure crease when you're doing that. So another version with the bridge is to extend one leg while you're holding the pelvic floor contraction. Foundation training does a leg trace that I really like. That's similar to that. And the Dr. Klein version is we can try the band. So I'll quickly show you all three of those. Again, just think decompression stance, just with gravity working with you now instead of against you. So, normal bridge, lift, extend. Higher you go. And don't be like me where you're holding your breath. The trace, similar to the supine founder, dorsiflexing, pulling the feet, getting that engagement. And then we're just taking the one leg over, tracing. So this one you can time with your breathing. And then the dark Klein version, same as that, just with the band. This might look similar to this exercise. And the higher I get up, the more my spine wants to flatten, so don't let that happen. So I was thinking you need to start here, keep the curve in the back. Maybe just don't go to 90. Again, you want to So in foundation training, kneeling founders are a thing, and I've noticed child's pose has always helped my gut release in the past. So big thing with child's pose, a lot of people spread the hips too much. It might be good for more pregnancy, but remember we want to internally rotate the hips. We don't want to go too frog-legged. So the narrow founder, maybe you can get a little wider in the knees. Big the toes together. That way you can squeeze a little bit, turn them in. You might need to play around with where you feel the contraction most. I actually feel that better there. If you get too wide, it's hard because the pelvic floor is too dropped. But experiment with that. There you go, and then you can just do traces, driving up, or just normal founder. Show you from the side. Tuck those toes in, squeezing the hips. Knees can't go anywhere, so it's all from the hips. The knees just stay there. Or traces. Really, I'm just like, it seems like I'm shrinking, or just really just hinging more. Really engaging that hinge and that hip flexor there. So you can think about that if you were to go down into a child's pose like stance. Maybe get a little deeper than that. Didn't want to go with the camera view. Most people make the mistake of just going wide. Not a lot of pelvic floor activation there, unfortunately. It's bottomed out. So the flat foot squat is something I really feel is beneficial, because that's how people have been going to the bathroom forever. So the porcelain throne works against you. Squatty potty helps, but actually hinging on that squatty potty better. I'm not asking you to stand on your toilet. It's more about doing a flat foot squat instead of going to the bathroom in a better hinge position is going to help, but also doing flat foot squats throughout the day and just thinking about your pelvic floor when you're doing them, which is hard. You won't be able to get it down as deep, but even just resting in that position is good for you anyways. So sometimes I like to put a band around here. Otherwise you can come down, kind of push against my elbows like that. Straight from the side. Try not to let the toes come up too much. Really pushing out with those knees, arms pulling in, which actually helps round that chest a little bit. Diaphragm, pelvic floor working together. So pelvic floor activation to support the spine is obviously most important, learning the decompression stance, but there's also going to be some pelvic floor muscle imbalance, along with one hip more restricted or unhinged than the other. So the woodpecker variations are good for that. It's really easy to lose that pelvic floor contraction with that. So maybe just narrowing the stance a little bit more. Same idea as you're gauging pelvic floor, diaphragm, squeezing the hips in, but kind of pushing the knees out at the same time. And then subtle rotations. The more you turn, it drops. You'll feel it drop. So that lift, the pelvic floor engagement, holding that instead of letting it go, from that area. And that can help you. You'll notice one side's tougher than the other, or you'll have less balance. So switch that up. If you don't got the arms down, you could even just kind of, like we did before, engage and then hinge, like a good morning. That helps you teach you to give a little outward pressure. Keeping that chest broad, knees pushing out. Engagement the whole time. As the deeper you'll go, you'll tend to lose that pelvic engagement. That's the big problem I see with people doing the woodpecker anyways. It's just that understanding the pelvic floor really helps bring it full circle of what's happening and what muscles are letting go. Essentially, it's compression. We're losing that. Pelvic floor really helps hold that decompression stance. It's a big part of it.